Welcome to the MyLaw CLE presentation. During today's presentation, you may access the course materials from the handout section located on your screen. Attendees seeking credit for this presentation, pay careful attention to the screen. A pop-up box will be displayed at various times during the presentation. You will need to click Confirm on the pop-up each time it appears to qualify for CLE credit. In order to receive CLE credit, you must also click on the link that will appear at the end of this presentation to initiate the certificate process.
Hello, this is Business Development 101 Key Strategies for Attorneys. I am Lana Manganello, and I am here with Allie Dalton. I work to empower lawyers and law firms to elevate their business development, drive impactful growth, and cultivate long-lasting client relationships. I'm a business development consultant focusing on aligning attorney goals with strategic initiatives that not only enhance visibility, but also build meaningful connections and drive results. And I have a background in sales and marketing. My career has been dedicated to supporting professionals in differentiating themselves and maximizing their potential. Allie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you. My name is Allie Dalton, and I'm a partner at Bradley. We're a full-service law firm that is known for healthcare, among many other things. I am part of the healthcare practice group, and most of my practice is devoted to healthcare mergers and acquisitions, as well as day-to-day operations in a highly regulated industry. In the office and outside of the office, I'm very passionate about early career professional development, business development, and empowering first-generation professionals to succeed. So I'm excited to be here today.
Great, thank you for joining. All right, so the purpose of our session today is to equip attorneys with foundational business development strategies that can be integrated into their legal practice early on. So we're hoping participants will learn how to strategically position themselves to attract meaningful work, build strong professional relationships, and enhance their visibility and credibility in the market. This session intends to provide insights that are actionable on developing a strategic focus, establishing a thought leadership presence, and incorporating business development habits into busy schedules, ensuring that you have consistent and sustainable growth throughout your career. All right, so let's start with why business development matters. I think it's important to recognize that business development is not just about bringing in new clients. It's really about creating a fulfilling, strategically aligned career that offers both personal satisfaction and professional success. There's a lot of reasons why prioritizing business development early in your career is crucial. Allie, do you want to kind of go through the key points of why business development makes such a big impact on kind of the trajectory of your career and how you feel about your work throughout your practice?
Yes, absolutely. And I think I speak for both of us when I say that our hope today is that, especially if you're an early career professional, that you walk away knowing that this is not just about, like Lena said, bringing people in the door, but this is about building relationships. And this will help you both to bring clients in, but also to build your reputation within your firm or your platform, as well as having a brand recognition early on. And this will give you choice. This will give you choice to choose your clients, to choose your matters, and to choose who you work with. And this can be particularly helpful if you're an early career professional. I think a lot of early career lawyers feel like they're at the whim of whatever partner they're working for or client. And by way of developing a strong brand, a lot of the times you'll get first dibs on really interesting work or some of the best partners to work with. That can mean different things for different people. But having that strong network and relationship and brand will help bring that about. And then also the benefits over time fulfillment, leverage, financial gain, market desirability, and career options. Even if you choose to stay somewhere, it's really nice to know what you're worth in the market, and doing this business development work will help you get there.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I agree that, we have some things here on the slide as far as the more obvious things, like you probably can make more money if you are the one driving the business. We talked a little bit about choice, being able to pick your clients and pick the matters that you work on, really create an opportunity for you to be more engaged and excited about the work that you're working on, and also the team that you work alongside. When you're the one driving the business and bringing in the clients, then you have the opportunity to bring in who you want to work with on those types of things. And I think you have leverage inside of your organizations as well. So, beyond kind of the more obvious financial success, there are a lot of things that may not immediately come to mind, but giving you those options where you can kind of steer your career is really, I think, one of the main things that people early in their careers aren't thinking about. So investing in business development skills early paves the way for sustained growth. So I'm a business development consultant working with law firms and lawyers, and historically firms were typically bringing people like me in to coach people who either were partners or about to become partner on how they can start to build their brand and network and bring in business. And I recognized pretty early that a lot of these skills were essential for bringing in the opportunities and experience to learn how to be a lawyer. So, waiting until you need to bring in business to develop these skills that are deemed business development skills are really just human skills that you are going to be at an advantage if you start thinking about these early. So really understanding how you want to build a practice, clarifying what you want your practice to look like, and having goals around that, having a robust network of mentors and colleagues and potential clients is going to set you up for success. Being able to, once you've focused what your ideal practice looks like, starting to build visibility and credibility sets the stage for that. And then figuring out, how do you stay top of mind with your network so that they remember you when new opportunities arise. Allie, do you want to add on to this?
Sure, yes. So especially for associates, as you were saying, it can feel a little foreign to think about business development, I guess, in the way that as an early career professional, you might think about it, which is bringing people in the door, people who will ask for your expertise and who will pay your bills and make the firm or your organization money. I think that it helps to reframe it as the relationship building that we were talking about, and really thinking about the skills that you have. Chances are that as a lawyer, whether you're an extrovert, an introvert, you're personable, you understand the value of connections with people and making those connections. And I will say that I think oftentimes associates think that they don't already have a lot of the skills that are necessary for successful business development. And it is as simple as looking at what you share with someone. When you go to a conference, you might set a goal to meet 3 people. When I was an associate with some of my associate friends here, I would go to conferences with them and we would force ourselves to have at least 3 new business cards or contacts on LinkedIn before we left to make sure that we didn't segregate ourselves and not chat with people. And what you do with that there's not a ton of lift. And I think we have some practical tips on how to do that. But some of the things that I found was just being interested in people, asking people about who they are, what they care about, their families, and continuing those relationships. I think that it can be easy to underestimate when you're a first year associate or early career, professional, how this will play in the long term. And a lot of the times, folks have winding careers. And so now I'm seeing the fruits of those relationships now that friends and other folks are in-house, or they have grown their practices and have work that I can handle on their behalf. And I would have not had those opportunities had I sort of written off those early connections. And so I would say to set yourself up by not turning away opportunities to grow your network. I think that's a very natural sort of low-hanging fruit that you can have as an early career professional or young associate. I also would say that this is both external, and I think we do a better job of encouraging that piece, but it's also internal. I think that, as we were saying, as far as choice, the things that you're getting staffed on, the teams that you're getting to work on, you can build those relationships with the partners and supervising attorneys in your organization. And that can be huge, both from opportunities that might be available to you and staffing on teams, but also for people who are willing to go to bat for you when your name is being mentioned in a room that you're not in, or someone asks about some kind of opportunity for an associate. Having those folks who recognize your name or just think of you as someone who's nice and warm and engaging can go a really long way. So I would encourage folks who are listening and here with us today to not write off those small connection points, because I think that this can really set you up long term to have some successful relationships that can bring in work.
I think that's an important point to acknowledge, is that business development is a learned skill. And I talk to a lot of people who are like, I hate business development, or I'm bad at business development. And that's because they have a certain kind of idea of what that means, going to a gala in a room full of people you don't know and working the room. And that most definitely is not the way that most people are doing business development. And the reality is, kind of what Ali has already alluded to, is business development is about, having a focus on what you're trying to achieve and then building authentic relationships with people. And those things are natural and everyone kind of can figure that part out. And it kind of aligns with our human nature to be connected to other people. So I think the key part is being thoughtful about what you really want to achieve and who you align with and what you're trying to make happen in your career. And then coming up with a strategy that is personal to you, because at the end of the day, you have to kind of enjoy business development to be good at it. And so, again, we'll start talking about how to build a strategy, but understanding that this framework is one that's available to everyone and is a natural way for humans to interact with one another, so that everyone should have some level of business development skill, no matter kind of whether or not you find yourself to be an introvert or an extrovert, but really thinking about, how are you building a community of key contacts that are going to support you as you build your practice.
So I'm a first-year partner. I am homegrown here at my firm. And when I arrived as an associate, I felt like this was what helped me get to where I am today, of building those relationships early on. And as you were saying, of identifying who are the folks either whose practice group I admire or respect or want to learn from, or who are the folks who are in firm leadership or doing things that I find interesting, even if they're not in my own practice group. And it was those relationships were built early on from just asking about things that they were working on, looking at the firm news and kind of seeing and following up with them. But I saw it play out with having a great name brand and reputation internally within my organization, especially from folks who had never worked with me. They had no reason to think that I was this wonderful person who could, solve all problems that they were staffing me on, that they could staff me on. And seeing how that played out as I went toward, partnership elevation, just having so many people in my corner was really helpful. And I will say that the investment, as you will share later, those little minutes of time that you add in the bank really paid off long term. And so I'm a big fan of letting folks know that you are not wasting the time, especially building those networks internally when you're this early in your career.
Great. So we talked a little bit about starting early with a strategic focus. And when you're early in your career, that might be hard to do in figuring out, oh, how do I want to be known in this organization beyond someone who says yes and gets the work done and delivers a high quality work product. I feel like those are table stakes, and you need to be an excellent practitioner, and start thinking about kind of beyond providing excellent work. How can I make myself stand out in this organization? So thinking a little bit about what success truly means to you, I think is an important place to start. So I wanted to take a second to do this exercise, and have you, if you have a notepad with you, I think this is worth kind of working through. But think about the clients, referral partners, colleagues who energize you and they inspire you. Think about what characteristics these people have and why you enjoy working with them. Think about the work environments where you feel like you thrive. So, do you prefer a collaborative, fast-paced, or a collaborative environment, a fast-paced environment? Do you prefer kind of more methodical, detail-oriented settings? What kind of matters do you like working on? So, consider the types of cases that excite you, and they align with your strengths, and that they also challenge you. I think that's an important piece, where you feel like you're growing. What do you think? What have you worked on that you find most fulfilling, and most meaningful? And I think it's helpful to kind of think through, in 5 or 10 years, what does an ideal career look like for you? What kind of work are you doing? What kind of, or who are you working with, and who are you working for, which types of clients? There's really no right or wrong answers. This is about what matters most to you. And I find that, sometimes it feels like, what you want doesn't already exist in your organization. Maybe, no one has a practice that's exactly what you want for yourself. And I think that's totally okay, because all of the most successful attorneys that are kind of at the stage that Allie's at, um, are are building practices that have never existed before in a way that no one has done them before. And that really is something that you need to get comfortable with, because the way the top rainmakers at your firm built their practice, it's probably not available to you. Those days have come and they've gone. And so thinking about, what do you want to do for yourself? And the nice thing is, most of the kind of earlier career attorneys that I work with, you know, haven't identified someone who has an exact practice that they want to emulate. And they are kind of the masters of their destiny, and as far as kind of figuring out what that looks like for them. So coming up with this kind of personal vision statement, is helpful as you start to think about your business development strategy. And just for an example, of an employment litigator, personal vision statement, something like, I work with innovative tech and emerging companies whose founders are committed to fostering a thriving workplace culture and attracts top talent. I partner with clients who understand that protecting and empowering their workforce is key to long-term success. I also collaborate with supportive colleagues who take pride in their work and value a balanced approach to both their careers and personal lives. And again, I think these types of statements, they'll evolve as you do and as you get exposed to more things. But it's a nice way for you to kind of put a framework around how you're going to build your practice, and gives you a guidepost for your business development activities. So, Allie, do you want to walk us through how you can, why you should focus something for marketing purposes and how to do it?
Yes, so there are a lot of advantages in honing in a specific area of law, and I know, especially for early career folks, it can feel a little daunting. Like you are going to niche yourself into something or box yourself into an area. But I think that hopefully your takeaway from this discussion is that it's actually really valuable. Specializing allows you to become known as the go-to expert in a particular field, and that can really build your reputation, and it makes your marketing efforts more impactful. I think it can be easy early on to feel like you need to be all things to all people. And I do think internally, in many ways, you will be as an early career, especially as an associate. But as you consider what your practice looks like and you refine your mission statement and your vision statement, like we were just talking about, consider whether there are pockets of things that you're starting to develop either an interest in or something that's already naturally developing in your practice. The things that I have seen, the ways that I have seen this develop, both in my practice and in friends' practices, is sometimes it's a matter that comes in where you become the go-to lead associate on it. It becomes recurring. You didn't sign up for it. For me, for example, it's a California licensing scheme for outpatient facilities. I did not go to law school wanting to do that. I think it's interesting, but I certainly didn't pick it. It chose me. But now I'm the California girl at the firm when it comes to licensure stuff, especially for outpatient facilities, whether it's a surgery center or a clinic, or anything like that. And so for me, that was a way that I now internally, but both externally as well, am able to get clients from that, and clients know to reach out because I've dealt with those matters before. But then also internally, folks across our platform will call me to ask questions about California Board of Pharmacy or whatever it might be. And then my chosen, more so chosen piece of my practice has actually been in the surgery center space. I enjoy working with healthcare systems that have surgery centers. And so I have tried to hone in that expertise by both seeking out that work internally with my practice, but also becoming active in different trade organizations and other sort of I guess niche marketplace pieces of that ASC puzzle. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But consider where there are those natural pockets of expertise in your practice. I've seen some younger associates who are honing in on AI, some of the tech advancements. Anything that's innovative to your practice, I think, can be really helpful, especially in the context of if you are a Gen Zer or more like an early career professional. Some of the folks in your organization might not be as comfortable or as familiar with some of those emerging trends, and that's a great way to become indispensable to a team and also to gain that expertise or have your organization or firm pay or otherwise train you to get that expertise. It's easier to target clients when you have that defined niche. If you identify, like we did in the prior exercise, kind of your dream client or who you want to be working with, then using what you're specializing in can be easier to know exactly like how you're marketing yourself, whether that is I'm going to attend the ambulatory surgery center conference this year, or I'm a hospital lawyer or a litigator, wherever it might be. When you have those conversations, like we were talking about, just those natural connection points with people, it is a lot easier to say, hey, I'm an expert in outpatient surgery centers, and knowing that that's your, and even I guess more niche down in some ways as you develop your practice further, that can be really helpful in building those connections and making you an easy sell internally and externally early on. And then also just from a value standpoint, both for you and your organization, specialists often command the higher rates and attract more significant opportunities because of that focused expertise. And I have seen that in healthcare. Healthcare is a highly regulated space, and clients want someone to solve their problems that could either cause somebody to go to jail or cause them to lose Medicare enrollment or cause them to lose a giant payer contract. And they're significantly less worried about how much it is going to cost for them to solve that, knowing what's at stake. And I think that that is something that you should consider as you think through, like, the intersection of what interests you, the skills that you're investing time in, the work that you're seeking out internally and externally. But it can be a really powerful way to become indispensable really early on. And I will just add one more note that it's often not the super sexy, exciting things. I do think you can build that part of your practice, but I will say that a lot of what in my practice has met all of these different benefits and pros of specializing comes from those little pocket areas of expertise that I never knew in law school were available, or that I would go down, those particular paths. But they've proven to be a really consistent driver of business into the firm and in my docket.
Great. And I think helpful to recognize that there's a million ways to build your practice. And so having this focus really gives you kind of a practical approach to building out a strategy around business development. And also know that picking something is not getting married to it. So, I'm usually encouraging the people that I work with to think about it as something that we're going to work on for the next 12 months. And, oftentimes, you'll start to feel like, understand what it would be like to build a focus in that area, and either double down or pivot. But I've never seen someone pick a focus and it backfire. So it's definitely something that creates the most acceleration in building a network and having kind of efficiency in your business development is figuring out a focus. So a practical way to approach this is to come up with a list of all the matters that you've worked on, and really think about it as, which ones were enjoyable, where did they come from, who were you working with, how did you feel about it? Because really thinking about it from, I really enjoy the type of people that I work with on these kinds of matters, versus the people I work with on these other kind of matters that I don't specifically, get excited about when one crosses my desk. So know that, this is work, especially if you're early in your career. Not everything's going to feel amazing all the time, but recognizing what you really enjoy and starting to lay the foundation to attract more of that is the point here, so that you build some momentum there where you're starting to steer your practice so that you get more and more of that. So, going through your matters, and you should have this list. It's just good practice to have your recent matters, rep matters. That's helpful for marketing. We won't get into that too much, but having that list will be beneficial for you in multiple ways. But definitely, as you're trying to figure out what do you want to focus on from a marketing perspective, looking at that that list will be helpful. Ali already talked a little bit about opportunities in the marketplace, especially if you're early career, looking at things that are evolving, where there are really no competitors that have done this forever because this technology just emerged, or it's new legislation. There's a few different ways to pick a target. I am always going to make sure that you start with things and people that you enjoy, and know that, especially if you want to get your foot in the door, really focusing as much as you can, especially if you're in an area like healthcare where there is a lot of competition. If you can niche down and be the go-to person for something specifically, you can give yourself an opportunity to work on something where they may have existing representation in other areas, but because you've kind of held yourself out as an expert in a specific area, they're going to give you this matter to work on, and then it can evolve into other things. Ali, do you want to add at all to?
Sure. Yes. I wanted to add that if you are someone who, like me, forgets to update that recent matters list, I would just suggest, this is just like a practical tip that I learned along the way. You can often either pull it from your billing software or have your billing department run a list of significant matters that you worked on in the past 12 months. And I try to keep that refreshed. And that's a prompt to me to consider exactly what you were saying, whether there's something interesting that I worked on that I want to grow the pie on, or just adding it to my firm bio. I think a lot of us can forget to do that. And you want to make sure that that is where folks come to find you. And so I think that's a great way. Don't feel intimidated if you're, a fourth year associate and have not written down any of the things that you've worked on. Pulling that can be helpful. And then I would also add, just on your leveraging your reputation and finding those connection points. If you do decide to specialize in something, consider whether there's some kind of industry group that is the go-to industry group or organization for that, whether it's locally or nationally. For health lawyers, it's the American Health Law Association. They have specific programming. I get to serve as the Early Career Professional Council Chair. We have a whole council and program built around helping early career professionals succeed, volunteer opportunities. There are things like that also for different practice groups, but also just your local bar. It might be a great place to start and to get involved. And then last but not least, I would just echo what we said earlier, that there are things that you might become an expert in that don't exist right now. And be open to that. I know I've watched a few of our associates who came in during 2020 really get to focus and learn the new legislation related to COVID relief funds. I don't know that any of them went to law school thinking that they would become the expert on that, but I have watched them get to be in rooms that folks their seniority level might not traditionally have gotten to be part of or be in, because of that level of expertise that they developed. And it has continued to evolve. Once PPP loan forgiveness came out, they had to learn that. And I have just watched them build that. And it's not the core of their practice, it's not all they do, but it certainly has really allowed them to flourish and do some really interesting work across, not just in our healthcare group, but across the firm platform. So just be open to those as well.
Great. And so once you've researched where there's opportunity and where you want to focus, and you've decided, oh, I'd love to be known as the go-to person for X, now we have to figure out, all right, well, do I just deem myself the expert in this area? And so I think it's helpful to think about the ways that you can build credibility and visibility. And the easiest way that I've seen professionals do that is through thought leadership. So that term gets used a lot, and people have varying ideas of what it means, but usually it means sharing your expertise through different mediums, including writing, speaking, and digital content. So writing articles, blogs, providing media commentary to journalists, giving these types of webinars and presentations, speaking on podcasts, creating digital content. So videos are becoming more and more part of a marketing strategy, creating newsletters, other kinds of digital publications are all things considered thought leadership. And thinking about, how you want to make yourself known as an authority in a specific area, having quite a bit of this happening and in a focused way where you're talking, writing, and speaking about a theme will allow you to start to become more and more memorable. And it gives you, especially if you're aligning your thought leadership with platforms that are credible. So, like Ali was talking about, looking at the associations and organizations that your ideal client and the partners that you work with hold in high regard, and writing and speaking through those types of organizations builds your credibility and starts to build a narrative that you are an established authority in this area because you've written 3 articles about it, and it's published with the ABA and Law 360. You spoke at the conference, all on this one topic. So it makes it very clear that you're the expert in this space. I know Allie's done a great job of this. You want to share with everyone how you
Yeah. Sure. So I will say that the first thing I would encourage you is if you zoned out the moment you read writing, articles, blogs, any of that on the slide, please know that whatever you're passionate about, there's likely a place for you to hone in and develop your expertise and share it in a way that's meaningful to you. I have really enjoyed getting to do a lot of podcasts. And so I have worked with the American Health Law Association to do programming on our podcast platform, speaking of health law, for early career professionals. And it sounds a lot more complicated than it actually was because the platform was already built, the organization had it. They were just looking for folks who really were passionate about sharing content on topics that were helpful and interesting to early career professionals. And so I was able to work with them on a series of health law journey episodes where we interview different folks who are both lawyers and just health law professionals about their careers and how they got there and what tips and advice they would give their younger selves as they were getting into the industry. I can write articles and I have done, but that is not my passion as much as podcasting and engaging with people and just getting to know people's stories and share them. And so I have found that some of my mentors have said that is great that I'm doing that. They would never do that. That is not the way that, they were raised or what was interesting to them as they were coming up as lawyers. And so I would say, to echo some of our earlier points, think about what you like. This is supposed to be fun in some ways. It doesn't have to be a pain to do business development. And you can build this expertise. I will say also that level of digestible content, I think sometimes can get more eyeballs. I don't think that the goal is necessarily to go viral, but I do think that there is something to be said about how people are consuming media these days. And I have found that those efforts have really paid off. And then also just LinkedIn and other social media, this comes with 100 caution bells. Please be mindful that these are professional environments and what you share obviously is a reflection of, your firm, your organization, who you are. So keep your vision and kind of the practice you're building in mind as you engage in those platforms. But don't underestimate how powerful LinkedIn can be, especially within your own network. If you're on a large platform like a large law firm, that is actually how I connected and met a lot of our partners here across our footprint, including folks who thought that they had met me at some point or had heard of me. We would meet at firm retreats and they would say, "Oh, I think I'm connected with you on LinkedIn." And that's how they were keeping up with what I was doing. And so just be smart. You have a lot of tools, and we'll talk about some more practical tips later on, but don't feel like you have to shoehorn something that doesn't fit for you. If podcasting sounds absolutely horrifying, write an article, find something that you're passionate about.
Right. And thought leadership's a great way to provide value also to the people that you've made connections with, whether you're providing education or things like that. Also repurposing the things that you're working on into other things. So Allie might have a podcast that we could turn the transcript into an article. And so a lot of you work at organizations that have marketing departments, and there's people that want to help you get the most out of your thought leadership. So engaging with them to figure out, all right, I did a podcast. Can I turn the podcast into something else? The answer is yes. We could take snippets and put it on LinkedIn, or take the transcript and turn that into an article. I think, making lawyers busy is not the point of this exercise. It's really to be strategic and have a consistent message that you're giving. So, writing for the sake of writing or speaking for the sake of speaking is not really going to move the needle for you, especially if you're a busy attorney. But picking topics and themes that align with your long-term goals and making sure that your content is consistent with that and regular is going to be that piece that's going to make you a differentiated voice around a specific area. Great. So, I think this is always an interesting exercise, and I want everyone to take a moment to log into their preferred internet search provider and put your name in and maybe your practice area and see what comes up. And think about if you were kind of the ideal client that we identified earlier, or prospect or partner who's going to bring you in on this kind of work. Would you hire you for the matters that you've deemed as ideal matters for you and what you're interested in attracting? So looking at what the search results pull up, is it telling the story that it should be telling for someone to feel confident that you are the best provider of services that they're looking for? So usually LinkedIn is at the top of these search results. Your firm bio, those two might be competing, the LinkedIn and the firm bio, and see if they really reflect your professional goals, and where you want to be known as an expert. I know we can spend all day in a black hole of looking at our Google results, but I do think that this is a very worthwhile thing to know about ourselves and use to start thinking about what should I be doing from a marketing standpoint to better align my internet presence with what I'm looking for. Because at the end of the day, I mean, and this whole presentation is really about building reputation, so that you can get referrals. There's other ways that some lawyers build a practice through cold leads and things like that. We're not talking about that today. But the internet really matters no matter who you are at this stage, because if someone refers Allie to me, and I'm, a hospital, I'm excited about Allie and I trust the referral partner, I'm still going to throw her name into the Google search to see that she is who this person says that she is. And so, making sure, even if you have a fully word of mouth practice, that the internet is reinforcing what your close network thinks of you and thinks of your abilities. Okay. So I think, once you've done that, it's also helpful to recognize, when you've identified you want to be known in this area as an expert, and start to attract these kinds of specific clients, or you want partners to bring you in on this kind of work, so you can build the foundation that will lead to a career specifically around this area. Think about where you need additional skills or experience, or what you need to be highlighting, whether that's in your rep matters, in kind of the narrative part of your bio, on your LinkedIn, so that it looks like you have the experience to attract that kind of work. Allie talked a little bit about joining relevant organizations. So thinking about, all right, these clients are all part of this organization. If I was a leader in this organization, it would bode well for me in building my credibility and visibility. And think about, I think something that sometimes people skip over are, who are the actual individuals that hire or refer this kind of work. And so think about those people and where they are and what they care about. Because sometimes, I'll work with clients who are saying, I want to work with hospitals, and they're not thinking about, all right, well, who in the organization actually hires legal, representation, and how do they find those people, and really be that specific, and then think about, all right, this is where I need to build my credibility. All right, so let's talk about how we can build a strong online presence. Allie, do you want to take us through this?
Sure, yes. So the one we've already touched on before is keep it updated. Make sure that your firm profile, hopefully you got a peek at it when you Googled yourself, is not still the one that you have when you came into the firm. Make sure to use that matter list that you're putting together to keep it updated. And then also just make sure too that if you have published work or recent matters or anything like that, that you build a natural habit of reporting those, whether it's to your marketing folks or the folks who keep your firm bio updated. I have made a point of whenever I get that email that says, hey, the podcast is live, go ahead and forward it to our marketing department folks. I don't know what magic they do, but it ends up on my firm profile and it has the link and it has all the details. So again, most of you are likely at organizations where you have someone who can help you handle that and make sure it gets put in the right spot. Consistency is key. You want to make sure that your message is consistent across all platforms and that it reinforces that narrative that you that vision that you have and the reputation so that you can attract the clients that your dream clients that you want to attract. And I will say that this always seems to be the case with whether it's the firm bio that's neglected and your LinkedIn is hopping and bopping. I will say, as someone who's chronically online on business development stuff, I even had that, and one of my friends who does business development was the one who flagged it for me and said, look at your firm bio, look at your LinkedIn profile. Those two are not really matching. So make sure that you're keeping things updated as well. And then engage actively, participate in online discussions, and share relevant content, whether that's stuff that you've put together or stuff that might be relevant to those clients that you're trying to attract, or to set up sort of the network that you are trying to connect with, whether that's potential clients or folks who are also in your industry. And then don't waste a good opportunity when folks engage with your content. I think sometimes folks will be excited to share about a new opportunity or a new leadership or organization that they've joined. And then lots of folks are excited for you, and you don't follow up with those folks, whether it's just engaging with a comment or connecting with folks. There are times where your content will get out of your own space, and it's a great way to have a natural connection point with folks. And you're not trying to pitch them anything. You're just trying to build that connection. So you don't have to do a ton there, but make sure that, again, are you the kind of lawyer who you would hire? Is your dream client going to hire you based on your online presence? So make sure that chances are, at least what I've seen with associates and myself, is that you are doing more than what you're sharing externally. So make sure that you're bragging on the things that you've already spending time doing. I think chances are you're not going to need to do more. You're probably just going to need to advertise better what you're already doing.
Great. So I think it's important to recognize that an optimized digital presence sets the stage, but truly effective business development requires this genuine connection and strategic networking. Allie kind of hinted to posting and ghosting. So, saying like, oh, I won this award, and then not going back on LinkedIn for a month to see that, your law school alumni sent you a message on there is a lost opportunity. So the next thing that we want to talk about are really identifying the people who can influence or support your career advancement, and thinking about this broadly. So this can be people who can offer guidance, they can support your growth, advocate for new opportunities, especially inside of your organization. So looking at partners or associates in complementary practice areas that can bring you into cross practice matters. The professional development staff and business development professionals inside of your organization can be really helpful in helping you to identify opportunities. So building those relationships, and I feel like they're really great at connecting dots because they know what the other attorneys at your organization are interested in that may not have made public yet. And so uncovering those internal opportunities is really something that, even if you're a very late career attorney, the internal opportunities are always very substantial. So, at no stage in your career, unless you're a solo, should you be not focusing on opportunities inside of your organization and taking time and energy to build those connections internally and have communication regularly. Looking outside of the organization at people who can benefit from your expertise and might engage with your services in the future as prospects or clients. And paying attention to current clients. I think sometimes we think of business development as what can we bring in that doesn't exist, but there's lots of opportunity usually with your existing clients or past clients. Also paying attention to who you can add to your network that has the ability to refer you the kind of work that you're interested in, because they're working with similar types of clients. So that's, sometimes consultants, other kinds of advisors, depending on what your practice is, but thinking about who else is working directly with these types of clients, because usually it's a more efficient way to build your practice when you are working with people who have lots of the same clients that you have. And so they can send you a few referrals a year versus targeting the client themselves, which may take multiple years for an opportunity to pop up that fits directly in your wheelhouse. Allie, do you want to add a little bit to this?
Sure, yeah, just echoing what you shared on the internal piece, especially if you're early career, don't underestimate how much that network can boost you internally to opportunities, but also, and I think I mentioned this briefly when I was talking about LinkedIn, that adding folks who and engaging with them who are in your organization when you're in a large organization or a large firm can be really helpful in folks who wouldn't otherwise cross paths with you, knowing there are two pieces, right? You connect with them, but then also you keep your LinkedIn updated and you're sharing about the things that you're doing, things that you're passionate about. And that can be a really great way to make a really large platform feel a lot smaller. And then also, as I think I hinted at before, your professional development and business development staff are there to help you utilize them. I think they're all pleased whenever younger associates or early career folks reach out to them to engage them in, helping with building, whether it's your firm profile or your LinkedIn, any of those things. Use the resources you have.
Great. So building authentic and lasting relationships requires a thoughtful and consistent approach. And I think it's important, that's why we started with figuring out what you want and who you align with, because it's hard to build an authentic relationship with someone you don't have much in common with or you don't necessarily align with. So building relationships requires regular follow-up that is personalized. I think the adding value piece is really important. You can create the content with this thought leadership that we had kind of discussed, or just sharing a book or an article that someone else wrote is equally valuable. And I encourage people to think about that. Obviously, if you wrote something, getting the most out of that is important. And I notice a lot of times people will do some kind of thought leadership and then just put it out there in the ether and not think about the actual people that they know that might appreciate the content, along with a note around, hey, I thought you might be interested in this because of X, Y, and Z. I think being genuinely interested in people makes this a lot easier. So again, going back to who do you align with and actually enjoy, and then get very interested in getting to know them and their challenges, so that you can be a valuable resource to them, even if it goes beyond helping them with a legal matter, being thought of as someone who just wants to be of service is something that I think a lot of the top rainmakers that I work with have established, that people know if I ask Allie, for help with finding a preschool, she will respond and connect me with the right people. And that kind of thought gives you, or at least that kind of reputation, attracts a lot more opportunities than you always trying to figure out, okay, how can I get hired for work? And that being at the forefront of your mind. Allie, you want to jump in on how you've had success building authentic relationships?
Sure. Yes, it's not super dissimilar from what you were sharing as far as just continue to be thoughtful of people. Like if you make a connection, whether it's internal or external, you learn about the person. If you see something that reminds you of the person, or even you just think of the person and wonder how they're doing, don't be shy about reaching out or sharing those resources or the book or the article that made you think of them. I think that so much of the service industry, especially as lawyers, as we want to be trusted advisors, is exactly that last point that you have on the slide of building trust. And so I feel like so much of that does come from things like, hey, do you have a preschool recommendation, or do you have a vet recommendation, or whatever it is. Not all of it has to be like, here's this article I wrote about, the No Surprises Billing Act, and like, please read it because it's important for your business. Like, sure, that's great and that's well received, but just being a normal, nice human, I think, goes a really long way. And folks can write that off as something that it isn't worthwhile. But I would disagree on many levels. But I think it does help with business development and building those genuine networks that you're invested in and that care about you.
I think the hardest part for professionals, especially as you get further and further in your career and your network gets bigger and bigger, is thinking about how do I stay top of mind with these key contacts. So engaging consistently through regular personalized communication, using social media strategically, attending the right industry events. I think collaboration is an important piece that we haven't really touched on finding either professionals that are complementary or clients that are interested in working together on projects like writing an article or doing a podcast. Those oftentimes are a great way to either initiate or bolster relationships. Make sure you're showing appreciation for referrals. Stay active in your professional associations. Do these kinds of webinars. There's a million ways to stay focused or to stay top of mind. And so getting organized around it is definitely something that is a challenge, and we'll talk a little bit about that. We talked a bit about associations and professional communities. I think this is a great way to add to your network. Again, this is not an effort to make you busier. It's really has to be part of a focused strategic approach. So picking the right organizations and getting involved. I think, paying dues to be part of an organization is not really going to move the needle for you. So getting visible by usually volunteering, because most industry or professional groups are not for profit, and so they require volunteer leadership. And so raising your hand to be part of a committee or take on leadership roles is a great way to start to meet people and build your reputation. And we talked a little bit also about, most of these organizations have channels like newsletters or events, like these types of online events or in-person conferences where they're looking for thought leaders. So being able to kind of raise your hand and focus your contributions around the things that you want to be known for is a great way for you to build your visibility. So again, not doing it for the sake of raising your hand for all the things that are being asked, because these volunteer organizations have a lot of asks. So you need to be thoughtful about what you're saying yes to and make sure that it is in line with the reputation you're trying to build. So there's some slides here. I know we're coming up on the hour on how to build business development into your schedule. I think the most important thing to think about here is the fact that you need to prioritize it and put it in your calendar if you want to move the needle, because if you wait for things to slow down, you're really going to have a difficult time. And when things are slow, it's hard to get the momentum moving on, how to pick up business development. All right. Our key takeaways. So business development is a long-term investment. We really want you to think about what is important to you and focus your business development and marketing activities around a career that is exciting to you. Thought leadership is the easiest way for you to build a reputation that can attract the ideal work that you've identified. Building authentic relationships is the key to any kind of business development, and having some regularity in how you are approaching marketing and business development and staying accountable to your goals is a key to being successful here. So if you'd like a template business development plan, please either connect with me on LinkedIn or email me here at lanajm@outlook.com. I'd be happy to share with you a free template. And I definitely am interested in connecting on LinkedIn. I think Allie already made it clear that she was on LinkedIn and interested in connecting. And hopefully, what you've gotten out of our time today is that building a successful business development strategy is about building a career that is enjoyable and fulfilling. And I really appreciate you joining us today. And I hope that these strategies help you to build a practice that you love and help you find greater joy in your work.
Hello, welcome everyone to today's presentation, Ethical Boundaries in Attorney Advertising and Client Solicitation. Today we are going to be going over some different ethical topics that pertain to advertising, things you should look out for, things that could come up that you need to be aware of, and then just how to utilize the latest tools when it does come to advertising and different things that can evolve in the area of ethics. I'm going to be your presenter for this section of the seminar today. My name is Cari Sheehan. I'm an Assistant General Counsel at Taft, Stednius, and Hollister Law Firm in Indianapolis, Indiana. In doing Assistant General Counsel, I practice ethics every day, all day, helping with internal compliance, ethical questions, conflicts of issues questions, and that anything that just touches the rules of professional conduct. In addition, I'm an adjunct professor at the Robert H. McKinney School of Law, where I teach professional responsibility to law students becoming attorneys and teach them how to be ethical as they develop into their practice areas. Just to go over some other things, just take notes too, especially if you are going to be doing anything with advertising in your practice. You want to make sure you stay ethical. So I do encourage you to take notes during the seminar and just stay engaged in any way possible as we go through the different areas. Now, you may think attorney advertising is not that prevalent anymore, but it is. It's just a different form of advertising. About 81% of lawyers now use social media to do advertising. It's not the print ads we're used to seeing. It's not the television commercials that come on after the 6 o'clock news anymore. While we still have those areas, we see more online and social media context. We still have to, print ads that may come out in yellow pages, if you know what that is, or on buses or on benches, or just advertising at different functions and events using the firm's name, being a sponsor, having a sign or a poster, or some recognition. Those are all different forms of advertising. So it is still very prevalent, and it is something you really do need to consider, because owning a law firm, managing a law firm is like managing a business. You need to get clients, customers into the door, and so we have to market ourselves. But one of the biggest areas is the social media, and we are going to talk about some different social media platforms that you may want to utilize in your law firm when it comes to advertising. And about 77% of respondents or potential clients, they do come through the social media. So you are seeing that influx into it. So maintaining that, making sure that you have that channel out there is going to be important. You can also have a personal presence on social media. That can be a form of advertising through that type of area as well. It could be your LinkedIn account, it could be Facebook, it could be being a member of different organizations that promote you online. There are all different types of ways in which you can advertise, especially through social media. And I know there's those other ways I mentioned, like the print ads, the bus, the traditional things we're used to seeing, but this is kind of the future. You can even consider TikTok. I know when I say TikTok, we may think of, ooh, cringe, or, something like that, just because TikTok can be social media influencers, but it can also be attorney influencers or attorney advertisements. And that's another way to get your name out there, especially if you want to reach those younger generations in your marketing and advertising strategies. You need to go to where they frequent and to where they view different things. And that is going to be through the social media outlets and social media contexts. TikTok being one of them, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. Those are all types of platforms that we can utilize to market, and not just our traditional ones that we're used to seeing or used to doing over time. So we are going to discuss all of these in context with the rules of professional conduct here today, and kind of go over the do's and don'ts of it. But really, as I was saying, to have that modern business plan and advertising to compete in the markets today, you do need to think about these things. It is not just the commercial or the advertisement in the newspaper or on the back of the church bulletin anymore. You have to really get out there into the social media network and put yourself into that context, because it's not just the younger generations anymore. That's the prime target maybe for those. But also on those platforms are 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds in that mid-age range, which are clients and which are the budding clients that you really want, because they're the ones that are going to have the business. They're the ones that, are developing and growing themselves and in that time of their career normally. And so you've got to reach that demographic, and social media advertising may be the way to do it. But it doesn't come without some risk and without knowing the rules of professional responsibility so you can guard against those risks. The first rule that we want to look at is Rule 1.1, which is regarding competence. Anything we do as a lawyer requires competence. We have to stay abreast of the changes in the law, in our practice, and knowing the risk and benefits associated with relevant technology and how the technology affects our clients. So basically, competence means that anything that affects a lawyer, the clients, the law practice in general, we have to know, and we have to be involved in or have a level of competence. It doesn't have to be expert competence, but a level of competence in which we can actively participate, we can actively go forward and know the risk and benefits for our clients in those areas. Social media and advertising is one of them. And you can kind of think to yourself, do you know the lingo? Do you know how to get on LinkedIn? Do you know what features it has? Do you know Facebook or Instagram? Like, what types of advertisements could you do on each of those platforms? Do you know if they keep information confidential? Do they sell it to third parties? What are those different things that are going to affect the clients, going to affect your firm and you, and have touches on the rules of professional conduct? That's the level of competence we need to know when utilizing different platforms, especially third-party platforms, not meant just for attorneys. And that is because we do have to guard against those risks and get client consent if we're using their information in any advertisement or anything that we do in those realms. So really understanding how the platforms work, what they can do for you, how you can utilize them is going to be key and very important when it comes to attorney advertising and ethics. Now, you may ask, and you may ask yourself, or you may want to ask me, well, how do I get that competence? How do I learn the lingo? How do I know what technology is good and what social media is good and what's the best for advertising or just anything you're doing as a lawyer? And how do we protect ourselves? Those are all great questions, and we are going to answer most of them here today for you. But one of the ways that you can really start to understand the different platforms and technology is reading those user terms and agreement. That is the fine print that comes when you sign up for the platforms. So when you sign up to utilize one of the platforms or you want to utilize it in your practice, you go in, you create an account, you have a username, you have a password, and then it says something to the effect of, here are our terms and conditions. Most of us just scroll to the bottom or just click the little button saying, yes, we've read and approved them, and hit submit. We don't actually read them. That is probably 99.9% of America doesn't actually read those terms and conditions. However, as a lawyer, if you are reading them, or excuse me, if you're using that platform for your law practice, for something to do with your clients, for advertising, you need to read the user terms and conditions because that is where it's going to answer a lot of your questions regarding how does it store information? How does the algorithms work to get the information out? Does it cost money? What can and can't you do on it? Is it going to protect client confidences if you use client information in them? Those different things will probably be answered within those user terms and agreement, but you have to read them to know. And that's also starting to understand and stay competent, our rule 1.1 here, in knowing what we're doing when it comes to the advertising and it comes to ethics in those realms. Another rule we need to stay cognizant of when doing anything with advertising, especially if it's advertising on social media, is confidentiality. Confidentiality falls under Rule 1.6, as we all may remember from law school, where it states that a lawyer shall not reveal client information unless the client gives informed consent or the disclosure is impliedly authorized basically in the course of the representation or by law. So let's kind of break this down in a nutshell. So it's a mandatory standard that we cannot, because it uses the word shall, reveal client information unless the client gives informed consent. Now, what is client information? We're just breaking down this first part of it. Well, when we think about, representing a client, we think about the communications directly between us, the lawyer, and the client. The attorney-client privileged information, right? That's confidential. It has its own name, attorney-client privilege. That is part of confidentiality. So the part of it is, the communications directly between you, the lawyer, and the client. Those are privileged under the attorney-client privilege and fall under confidentiality. But that's not the only thing that falls under confidentiality. Confidentiality is way broader than just the attorney-client privilege. And if we look at the diagram I'm putting up on the screen in front of you, you can see that. The attorney-client privilege is this blue circle, and confidentiality is that big red circle around it. So yes, the attorney-client privilege is included in confidentiality, but confidentiality is way broader. That big red circle encompasses discovery. It encompasses talking to witness. It encompasses anything you learn in the course and scope of your representation of the client. So it's more than just your communications with the client. It's everything you learn while representing them pertaining to their case, everything they've told you, everything you've learned in your investigation, all the evidence, all the things, the client's name, everything is confidential. We cannot disclose any of that information unless the client gives informed consent and you'll see that probably needs to be in writing. So confidentiality is huge. So when you think about this in the context of advertising, if you're going to do an advertisement with client testimonials or with client names, like a representative saying, we've represented XYZ companies or individuals to try to get notoriety, you cannot do that unless you get that client's consent confirmed in writing, because everything about that is confidential. The client's testimonial, what you did for the client, the fact that you even represented that person or entity is confidential. So before you can use any client information in an advertisement or in anything you're doing, you have to get the client's consent confirmed in writing. So you can't just go rogue. This includes if you're using or referencing the client on social media, or if you're doing a formal print ad, television commercial, or anything in between. It also means, and we may not think of this as advertising, but think if you win a case. You win a case and you want to go online and you want to say, we just won XYZ for this client. And you state what you won. It's a groundbreaking verdict. You're taunting your successes. And you said the client's name, the case number, and you're like, we won. That's an advertisement. You're putting that out there probably for some pecuniary gain, which we'll see what makes an advertisement, so that other people see it, think you're great, and want to have you as their lawyer. That's the definition of an advertisement. It doesn't have to be that formal print ad. It doesn't have to be something you sit and methodically think and label this as an advertisement. It can be as much as taunting your successes. Now, the problem with that scenario is when you took out to social media and you listed the client's name, you listed the different areas, we do the XYZ, or, we won this, you just breached confidentiality unless you had the client's consent to make that post. Now, the defense that always comes back, or that attorneys try to claim in that scenario, is, but it's public record. Yeah, it might be. The client's name may be on the complaint you filed, it may be public record of the verdict, where you can go out to My Case or an electronic docketing system and pull it down, sometimes with a username and password. Sometimes you don't need that. But if we look at Rule 1.6 and the exceptions to confidentiality, nowhere in there does it say if it's public record, you can talk about it as a lawyer if you represent them. It doesn't say that. It actually says the opposite if you read the comments of Rule 1.6. Just because it is public record does not mean that you now have a free license to go talk about anything with the client you want to, their name, whatever's in the documents you filed, whatever's in the public record. You as their lawyer cannot disclose that information to a third party without the client's consent or impliedly authorized. And impliedly authorized is the situations where you're filing with the court to defend the client, those certain things, not making a social media statement, not doing an advertisement. That is not impliedly authorized. Those things need client's consent to do it. So confidentiality is huge, that big red circle we saw on the last slide, and it's way broader than that attorney-client privilege. There is no exception for the public information. And really where attorneys mess up is that social media. And if you're sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, this speaker is wrong, people do it all the time. They post about their wins, their successes, their client names. No one gets in trouble. Well, probably because maybe no one turns them in. But there's an ABA opinion 480 that specifically speaks to this, about the confidentiality we need and how even there's no exception for public information. And so do the comments of Rule 1.6, that they allude to it, they talk about it, that there's no exception for publicly available information. There's no cloak over social media. There's nothing like that. If you cannot do it in person, you cannot do it online. And that is something we always need to remember. We have to preserve our clients' confidences, and we have to be competent, that Rule 1.1 again, in doing so, which means really thinking about, okay, What am I putting out there? Do I have the consents I need? What does this really look like? And that comes into play every time you post either a formal advertisement, one on social media, or anywhere in between. We really have to watch what we're putting out there, and then we're not breaking these rules of professional conduct, our ethics, or anything like that. The exceptions to confidentiality, like I said, public information was not one of them. The exceptions to confidentiality disclosures fall under Rule 1.6b. They are normally very grave circumstances. You can disclose to prevent substantial injury. You cannot assist a client's fraud or criminal conduct, but they're imminent things. They're things that involve crimes or fraud. So if we kind of break those down a little bit, we cannot disclose, we shall not assist in further client's fraud. So if a client is using your services to commit a crime or to commit fraud, then we have to disclose. It's a shall standard mandatory. And that is because we do not want to be sitting beside our clients in jail. And if we're assisting them in committing a crime by giving them legal advice on how to commit the crime, or they're using our legal services to commit the crime, we're an accomplice. And we don't want to be doing that. So that's why our ethics say we cannot and shall not represent someone or continue to assist someone when we know that they're using our services for crime or fraud. The other one is a discretionary standard where we can disclose if to prevent substantial injury, either financial or physical injury to someone. It has to be imminent and it has to be severe. One of the examples people like to say or use is the fact that, say you have a criminal defense client come to you and they tell you where they buried their victim or the person that they murdered. Okay, some lawyers think, oh my gosh, I have a discretion now. I have to make a decision. Do I'm going to disclose this or not to prevent substantial injury? What's substantial injury? The person's already deceased. The crime is committed. There's nothing there. And if you disclose now, you're also adversely affecting your client, which is a breach of another ethical rule. So there are probably lawyers out there that know where bodies are buried, where, they're criminal defendants, if they committed the crimes or not, but they can't say anything. The ethics and confidentiality put an ironclad, zipped lip on them to where they cannot talk about it. So a substantial injury, financial or otherwise, would be something like your client comes in with a knife, is all hyped up, maybe in full psychosis if they have a mental disability or something, and they say they're going to go kill someone. They have the means, they have the opportunity, they have the weapon, they're hyped up. That may be, okay, now I've met that I can disclose what my client's going to do, even though it adversely affects the client. So in those situations, maybe we kind of go under that exception, but those are going to be very rare circumstances. So we need to look at, do we have an exception? And if not, then we have to keep the confidentiality of our clients when it comes to using anything in advertising. Who has the right to waive confidentiality? The client does, but it can also be waived inadvertently, meaning unknowingly. For instance, if there is a presence of a third party, any communication that should have been otherwise confidential is now not confidential due to that presence of the third party, unless the third party is essential to the representation, like a paralegal or a legal assistant or something of that effect. So some common scenarios where we inadvertently waive our confidentiality: speaking in public. Jailhouse conversations are never confidential if they're over the phone. Those are always recorded. Inviting third parties who are not the client into the meeting, even if it is a relative or a loved one of the client, they're still not within the confidentiality attorney-client privilege. You need to ask them to sit outside, wait until after the communication is done, so that you make sure that privilege and confidentiality attaches to where it needs to attach. And then also too, sharing conversation later with others. Again, that person can testify to what you told them. And this goes the same for advertisements too. If you put something online, that goes out to third parties. If you post an ad or an advertisement, it's going out to third parties. And now whatever information of the client you put in there, you've just inadvertently waived confidentiality. But the key is you don't have the right to do that. The client holds the key to waiving confidentiality. So if you inadvertently did it, you could be sued for malpractice or up for disciplinary violation. The client holds the key to any waiver of confidentiality, and only the client can waive it. It can be inadvertently waived other ways, but if you as the attorney do that, you're opening yourself up to malpractice and potential disciplinary violations. So you need to be very careful and know the bounds of the confidentiality and what you have to stay within to protect the client's confidential information. So as it comes to advertising, advertising is going to be a topic that is going to consume the rest of the presentation basically, but we have to take these concepts of confidentiality, of, protecting that attorney-client privilege into what we do in our advertising space. So advertising, the rules apply to any type of advertising, to social media, to television, to TikTok, to YouTube, commercials, billboards, anything in between. And I have referenced some Indiana rules here just because I am primarily practice in Indiana, even though I hold a license in Illinois as well. And so, but they do model the model rules of professional conduct. So the rules are going to be similar in each jurisdiction. However, please remember to check your specific jurisdiction's advertising rules because there are variations between the jurisdictions. Not everyone goes verbatim off the model rules of professional conduct. So make sure you check your specific jurisdiction. First one here, Indiana Rule 7.2, it provides the term advertised as used in the rules refers to any manner of public communication, partly or entirely intended or expected to promote the purchase or use of professional services of a law firm, or any employee of either involving the practice of law or law-related services. So if you think about it, when you post those comments, we won this case, or you just post under your name on Facebook, I'm a partner at XYZ, I practice this type of law, or your LinkedIn has your bio, your profile, your education, what your title is. It has, under your name, those different categories of where you're most marketable. That's an advertisement. It's partly or entirely intended to promote someone to contact you for your services. That's our product. Our services are our product. So even if you think, no, this is a personal Facebook account, the law firm has my law firm bio. If you have anything law related on your personal accounts, you may have transformed them into professional accounts subject to the rules of professional conduct. But even if they're personal, they're still subject to the rules of professional conduct because the rules apply to us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in our personal and professional capacity. So we do have to remember that. And we do have to make sure we are in compliance at all times in those different areas. So again, any communication that is entirely intended or partly intended to get a pecuniary gain or to have someone potentially contact you to purchase your services, that is considered advertising. So we need to be careful what we put out there. Now, the first rule that we will think about when it comes to advertising, aside from Rule 7.2 with our definition we just saw, is Rule 7.1, communications concerning a lawyer's services. This rule states that a lawyer shall not, so a mandatory standard, make a false or misleading communication about the lawyer or lawyer services. A communication is false or misleading if it contains a material misrepresentation of fact or law, or omits a necessary fact to make the statement considered whole, materially misleading. So we can't lie by omission. We can't, discolor or dissuade or, twist the truth. We have to be honest in all of our communications. And remember, I just said that the rules of professional conduct apply to us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in our personal and professional capacity. This one's no different. We cannot make a false or misleading communication about our services or ourselves. We just cannot do that. So we need to make sure that we take that into consideration and that we apply that in everything we do, especially when it comes to advertising in multiple contexts. Going on to the next rule of professional conduct that we need to think about is the 7.2, where we got our definition, where we got the information of what exactly advertising is. And that includes, as I said, pecuniary gain, or anything put out there for pecuniary gain. And we have to make sure that we communicate effectively and honestly in everything we do. We shall not compensate, give, or promise anything of value when we're recommending our services. We cannot state or imply that we're a specialist or that we're an expert in certain areas. And any communication made under this rule, meaning advertisement, we have to have certain things on it so that they know who to contact or sue for malpractice. It has to include a name, contact information of at least one lawyer in the law firm, and then who is responsible for the content. That is what we really need to focus on when it comes to posting things. Now, if you think about this rule, just think about, different areas like of your Facebook, your LinkedIn, different things like that. Do you meet all these benchmarks? Are you under rule 7.1? Is everything truthful, not false and misleading? Have you basically stated, contact information? Because if you're using it for advertising or you're putting your law firm name or what you do on there, have you done that correctly? And then make sure you have the things we need. Did you not basically overpromise or use client confidential information? Did you not hold yourself out as a specialist? These are different areas that we need to consider. Now, the specialist one and holding yourself out as an expert is really important when it comes to LinkedIn. And that is because LinkedIn has a feature called endorsements. And those endorsements can be viewed as holding yourself out as an expert or holding yourself out as a legal, basically specialist in the area. So a lot of attorneys, what they do if they have a LinkedIn profile or if they use LinkedIn, they disconnect that feature or turn it off and they just don't use it. Because if you think about it, for advertising purposes or just for any purposes, what benefit do you get from using that endorsement feature? Really no benefit whatsoever. The only benefit potentially would be someone sees it and goes, oh, they do legal writing or real estate work. Okay, great. But the risk of that, weighed against those benefits, the risk outweigh them. And the risk outweigh them is because, one, it can implicate the rules where you're holding yourself out as a specialist or an expert. And two, it can be misleading and also violate Rule 7.1. And it can be misleading because if your mom or if someone who's never used your legal services, they're just one of your friends, they're just someone who's like, oh, I want to be nice, I want to make sure that we do things this way or that way, then okay. That's a problem because that's misleading. They've never used your services. They're just endorsing you because they like you. They're just making you, trying to be nice. That's false misleading because what if you're really not in real estate? What if you really aren't great at legal writing? What if you're really not in certain areas and doing certain things? That is the problem. So we need to make sure that we either filter those, make sure they meet all the rules of professional conduct, or that we turn that feature off. And sometimes turning that feature off is the best way to do that. So two, making sure we have our name and address, that content that's required under the rules, and everything like that too. Keep a recording of everything you do. A lot of jurisdictions require you to keep copies of all advertisements for a period of 6 years, 7 years or more. And so those are things that we would need to do as well, even if it's those personal ones. Think about all your posts on your walls or your LinkedIn. Do you keep records for 6 or 7 years of everything you post? Absolutely not. And so sometimes it changes, you comment, you delete. But if it is qualified as an advertisement, we need to keep those things and we need to make sure that we comply with all the rules of ethics if we're going to be using social media, or social media has been transformed or could be transformed into a platform in which now we have to comply with the rules. So we have to be very careful of those different elements as well. Some of the things that are okay, because we've talked about all the things we really can't put on an advertisement. We can't put client testimonials without consent. We can't talk about clients' names without consent. We don't want to put anything misleading. We have to be honest. We have to, put our name and address and all those different things. But what else can we put in an advertisement besides, hey, hire me, I'm a lawyer? Well, the comments to Rule 7.2 give us some guidance on what we can put into those different advertisements. Name and contact information, fields of law in which we practice, date and place of birth, technical and professional licenses, foreign languages, names and addresses of bank references, office and telephone answering service hours. Those different things are okay for advertisements. There are things that we can do, things that we can utilize. And this list is not all inclusive, but it is what the comments give us. And so if you're wondering, okay, if I can't talk about clients, I can't put testimonials, I can't do any of those things, then, okay, great. What can we put? This is what we can put. And so if you stick to this list, if you stick to those basics, then that really will help and make sure you comply with the rules of professional conduct. Moving on to our next rule of professional conduct, 7.3, solicitation. Lawyers shall not, in person or real time, electronic contact, solicit professional employment in any way. This is important to you when you're doing advertising, because this is that ambulance chaser rule. If you think about it, I know I didn't read it in full, but that's the concept of it. We cannot go seek out clients if we know they need legal services, we're not going to go in their face, that ambulance chasing part of it. So we shall not, mandatory standard, by in-person or real-time electronic contact, so that's the online version, solicit professional employment from a prospective client with a significant motive for the lawyer's doing so is the lawyer's pecuniary gain. So if you're only talking to someone because you know they need legal services and you're trying to convince them to hire you for them, then that's a problem. It's that real in-face, real-time, person-to-person or electronic blog rooms, chat rooms, messengers, those different things where you can get in trouble for solicitation. Unless the other person you're talking to is a lawyer, has a family close person, or is a personnel close to family, or prior professional relationship to the lawyer. You cannot solicit employment of a prospective client, any of those in-person means, without, of course, meeting one of the exceptions. Just something to really remember in that context. This rule goes on. There's a lot of comments to this rule. So the comments to the rule and then also the rule itself goes through, if you are going to use advertisements so that the different jurisdictions can guard against solicitation, you do have to label them a certain way. You have to put them on file here in Indiana. As the rule states, you have to put them on file with the Indiana Supreme Court, and you have to do certain things if you're going to send out mailings or try to attempt that solicitation of people in need of services. There are certain qualifications around them so you don't violate the first part of Rule 7.3. So if you do have this rule in your jurisdiction, just make sure you read it in full and follow what's required so that you're not going to get in trouble for solicitation. Now, as I was kind of briefly mentioning earlier, there's different types of solicitation. There's written solicitation, telephone solicitation, and internet solicitation. Written solicitation is targeted mailings, but usually you label them a certain way. Some jurisdictions really guard against and don't allow targeted mailings. And targeted mailings, you can think about it this way. Say, for instance, you work at a plaintiff's firm or run a plaintiff's firm, and you get kind of the daily police runs or police reports. You download them, you look them up. You see these 50 people have been in a car accident. Well, you have your advertising group send out a pre-formed letter that you've already put on file with the Supreme Court in your jurisdiction, because that's required. It's the same form, same information, just giving contact information of your firm, what you do. It has the attorney advertising at the top. It has it stamped on the envelope. And then you just send them out to everyone on those police reports saying, you've been in an accident, or it's terrible to be in an accident. Let us help you, something like that. Those are targeted mailings. Those are normally allowed forms of written solicitation, but you have to use the proper labeling and comply with whatever your jurisdiction's version is of Rule 7.3. As you saw the one I put up in front of you for Indiana, you have to put it on file with the Indiana Supreme Court to pay $50, keep it for a period of years, update it if you change it, those different things. Telephone solicitation is just like face-to-face solicitation, which is forbidden by the first part of Rule 7.3. But telephone solicitation can even include pre-recorded telephone conversations. They're regulated as advertising. Generally, sometimes the pre-recorded ones are allowed. More so than not, the live ones are more kind of like the face-to-face and are prohibited. But some jurisdictions do allow the pre-recorded ones. So if your law firm, instead of maybe sending the mailings, does like a pre-recording or something, that would be jurisdiction by jurisdiction if that type of solicitation is going to be allowed. For internet solicitation, such as chat rooms, direct messaging, tweets, those different things, emails, different things like that, those are considered sometimes face-to-face. TikTok, direct messaging, email solicitation, generally allowed, kind of like the targeted mailings or the written portion. You just have to make sure you treat it like a paper mail, like something going through the U.S. service, like label it advertising, those different things. But otherwise, the direct real-time ones, or what they perceive as real-time chat rooms, direct messaging, TikToks, tweets, those can be considered the prohibited forms of solicitation, forbidden by the first part of 7.3. But if they're more the email solicitations, then it's kind of more like the written mailing solicitations at that point. Another thing to consider too when it comes to advertising is, how do you make advertising just easier for a lawyer? Well, artificial intelligence can help you. And as long as you stay within the advertising rules and follow the rules of professional conduct, you can use Gen AI, generative artificial intelligence, to help you create and come up with advertisements. But again, just make sure you comply with the rules. Truthfulness, making sure you have everything in there you need, not using that client information, keeping our confidentiality, and then use Gen AI to help you. And Gen AI, if you don't know what it is, or just what artificial intelligence is in general, it is a simulation of human intelligence by machines to perform tasks that people otherwise would not do. It's been around since 1950. We think about it as the models of the phone answering services, where they leverage, algorithms to say, press 1 for this, press 2 for that. But now Gen AI, this new form, generative AI, has come out to where it can create and think like a human being. So you can enter in prompts and it spit out, or, give you different responses or answers to where it acts, talks, and breathes like a human being almost. And it can think, and it can evolve, and it can learn, and it can be trained, unlike the answering services where it's just one algorithm, one way of doing things. This new Gen AI thinks, it's the chat box, and it thinks, more like a human in those different contexts. And so, but it's great for time, efficiency, scalability, getting wording correct, getting alternative ideas and thoughts, like those generalities. Gen AI can really help with that creative side of it. It can also produce images. It can give you pictures. It can give you skits or just slogans, different things like that. And it's great for those things. But again, remember Rule 1.1, we need to read the terms and conditions to make sure we always comply with the rules of professional conduct. We still don't want to put confidential information into a Gen AI platform, just like we don't want to put it on advertising. We still need to make sure we comply when it comes to those areas. But it can, this is what I was saying, it can do a lot of things. It can create blog posts, videos, image ideas, advertisements, letters to prospective clients, FAQs, different things, workflows, content creation. It can help in so many different areas, and it can be amazing, especially if you don't have that creative side to you as a lawyer. It can be great. Really, for content creation, especially when it comes to the advertising space, one of the most popular Gen AI models is ChatGPT, also known as OpenAI. You can find it at openai.com. And it is a paid subscription, or there is a free one. The paid subscription is a little better on what it gives you, a little faster, has a bigger database it pulls from for information. But even the free version can help you when it comes to your advertising. And it can also create images and pictures or slogans or logos. But we have to remember it pulls its data from the internet, and it doesn't necessarily comply with copyright laws or IP things, or trademark infringements or different things like that. So you do have to check the accuracy of the information and have oversight on any Gen AI platform you use to make sure you're not violating any of the rules, laws, or infringing upon anyone else's rights. But it can help with that idea creation and help you create an advertising that's best for your firm. Some of the features that are most popular on ChatGPT include language generation, question answering, text completion. There's different things. If you're like, well, I don't know what slogan to put, or I don't know the answer to this question, it can be that starting point. It can be that jumping off point. So when you have that stuck mental moment where you don't know where to go next, a Gen AI language model like this can really help get out of that writer's block, get out of that mental space, and give you some ideas that you then take, have the oversight, remember, because we don't always trust it, and create it into something that you need that will help you in your practice. In addition, it can summarize text. You can upload documents to it. Again, no confidential information in those documents because it doesn't keep confidences, but it can summarize things for you. It can translate your advertisement into different languages if you want to reach different markets. Say if you want to do Spanish, French, German, like have your advertisements for your services be out there in different languages, then it can help you do that, a nice translation tool. It can also too, if you want something to sound more stern or softer, it can sense tone and language and volume in communications, and it can adjust the language you have. So you can put your slogan or advertisement in there so long as there's no confidential information in it, and say, soften this language or make this more fierce. And the ChatGPT will rewrite the language in whatever sentiment you told it to rewrite it in. So it can do those things as well. It can also just chat with you too. I know that's not really an advertisement, but you can ask ChatGPT, how was your day? It's going to respond. How are things going? It's going to respond. So you can also have that chat feature and function with it as well. In addition, the list goes on. It can explain stocks. You can ask it to do designs, drawings, pictures, schemes, branding, different things like that. Brainstorm names if you don't know what to call your law firm or what combination of lawyer names you want in it. It can do all kinds of things. It can also, if you're doing like a community event or some type of marketing advertising like that for your firm, and you need an idea of an event or an idea of a game to play with the community, or an idea of what to do for community involvement, ask ChatGPT. It can help you brainstorm those ideas. So utilizing AI to help with our advertising and our creativity can really push us ahead and be a lifesaver in so many contexts. But we do have to remember the rules of professional conduct with it, just like we have to remember the advertising rules when we do advertising. And those rules do come into play here. We cannot put confidential information into Gen AI programs that are provided by third parties unless we can verify that they're going to keep the confidences. Who owns the information? Do they give it to third parties? Do they store it? Who has control? We never want to put confidential information into a third-party Gen AI program. We also, if we're going to be using Gen AI for client work, want to communicate that with the client, tell them we're going to use it, tell them the risk and benefits, why we're using it, and then get the client's consent and permission for that. Fees too, if you're using Gen AI for client work, you can only charge the time you actually spent, not the time you would have spent absent the technology you're using. So it can also really hurt or harm your fees too if you're hourly based. We do have to have our supervision over us using it, our subordinates using it, our non-attorney employees in the firm using it. So if you've tasked one of them to do something with the Gen AI, like make an advertisement, make sure you double check or supervise what they're doing and the content that is output from the Gen AI program. And then we also have to watch out for Rule 8.4, prejudice, bias, discrimination, prejudicial to administration of justice. Gen AI pulls normally its data and information from a certain area. A lot of times that's the internet. The internet is not unbiased. The internet is not discriminatory. The internet isn't thinking about being prejudicial to administration of justice or not being prejudicial. And so any output we get from a Gen AI program, whether it be for our advertisement, whether it be for our client work, we have to double check it to make sure it doesn't violate prejudice or any of those rules too. And so even with all these risks, why do we use ChatGPT and Gen AI models? Because it helps us. It can help us write a blog post. It can write the blog post for you. Give it a topic. It'll write it for you. But you got to review it. Got to review it. We can do lawyer listings. It can help, pay attention to practice areas, memberships, reword stuff for you. It can help you create a YouTube video. It can give you ideas for that. It can help you with your LinkedIn platforms, content to post on them. But again, remember, we have to be truthful. We can't list client information, and put in all of our disclaimers. But the Gen AI models, especially like ChatGPT, can help you get these advertising ideas that are going to get you in front of the masses and generations that you want to draw in as your clients for your firm. It can do that language translation. It can do all kinds of things. So utilizing what's available within the rules of professional conduct can help with attorney advertising. Just to go through some of the social media platforms a little more in detail and give you some slides about them too. LinkedIn is a great one. Again, we already talked about hiding those endorsements at the bottom of the screen here, but this is kind of that networking that we see nowadays. You can control what you share. You can control what people view. You can block people. You can restrict viewing, narratives, anything like that. But it is kind of that professional networking system that a lot of lawyers use and a lot of professionals use. Networking is not always done face-to-face anymore. A lot of it is done online. And so we need to make sure our LinkedIns are up to date. We need to make sure that we're complying with the rules on them and everything in between. We also have Facebook. We can control to view your posts, your parts of your profile, setting stuff as public, not public, those control features. A lot of people think of Facebook as more of a personal one, but again, remember I said attorney advertising can be a personal social media page or one you consider professional. If you list anything on there where it's in part or fully for pecuniary gain or to let people know you're a lawyer if they want to contact you for your services, even if it never amounts to anything, if you put it out there for that small, even 1% intent, then it's an advertisement. And so your Facebook pages, while you may think they're personal, can be transformed into that professional advertisement. So we still need to think about those controls, still need to comply with the rules of professional conduct of advertising, confidentiality, and all those things. And just make sure that we save them, especially for those solicitations if we're soliciting anything, and that we're fully complying with the rules in all aspects. We also have Twitter, filter notifications, different things. Again, just like we've talked about, Twitter does have some different features, which are listed here on the screen in front of you. A great place for quick advertisements or media posts. You'll see big law firms shoot stuff across like this attorney's doing this attorney's doing this firm's participating in this event. Those are small, what I call burst advertisements almost, where you're doing a little soundbite out there to get the firm's name, to get your name out there, and just advertising what you do and that you're involved in the community. And you may think, well, those are just, taunting successes, but why do we do that? We do that so other people see it and potentially contact us or our firm to hire us for a paying representation. So again, Twitter is good for those little burst advertisements, those little sound bites, but make sure you comply with the rules of professional conduct. Instagram, Snapchat, things, same thing. Maybe you maintain one for the firm, post pictures of you doing good deeds, volunteering at shelters, volunteering at Habitat for Humanity, post someone's bio or picture that just joined the firm stating, what they do. Again, those bursts. Now we have to stay away from doing fake accounts or anything like that. If you do have a personal Instagram account and you're putting across your own, successes or that of your firm, that can transform your personal one into a professional one. But either way, we have to stay compliant with the rules of professional conduct. So another one of those burst advertisements that can go out. YouTube commercials, again, nowadays it's not always the 6 o'clock news, but also doing YouTube television trainings, TV commercials. A lot of lawyers and law firms advertise on YouTube now because it hits those generations that are younger than some of us, and maybe we're in those generations, but that's where they get their news. That's where they get their entertainment. Maybe that's even where they watch TV. But we still have to remember those rules of professional conduct when it comes to it, putting on our disclaimers, making sure we're compliant. We have to watch out for those things. Here's an example of a YouTube video or advertisement. A YouTube ad was run by a lawyer who showed a car accident, a couple in the hospital waiting room, the husband and father kissing his daughter goodbye for the last time, and then the lawyer arguing to a jury in the courtroom. That sounds okay, right? Traditional plaintiff's advertisement you see. But the problem with this was it was false or misleading. It was false or misleading because the lawyer had never tried a case, and the law firm even had a policy against going to court. So the fact that he showed him arguing in a courtroom was false or misleading to the general public and in violation of the rules of professional conduct. So we have to watch what we put in our advertisements, especially if we have Gen AI create it or we're creating it. We really need to think, is this the truth? Does this give a false impression? How would a layperson perceive this? What is this showing of my services? What is true? What is not? And we have to think of that every time we put something out there. Another thing to consider here, TikTok, like I mentioned earlier. TikTok, if you are a TikToker, I think your goal as a lawyer, if you're an attorney TikToker, is to educate the public on the law, entertain them a little bit, thinking that, lawyers are human, and inspire them to go to law school or inspire them to contact an attorney when they need services, not to take matters in their own hands. But educate, entertain, inspire, and do not violate the rules of professional conduct. Short creative videos, these can be little advertisements, little sound bites on the law. Just make sure, because TikTok, I know they have those side by sides where someone gives a complaint, an attorney answers it. Watch out for UPL when it comes to those. Yeah, you're answering it maybe to try to get other clients of your own on the TikTok channels. But again, if you're answering someone's legal question on TikTok and you're not licensed in the jurisdiction in which the matter is pending, you may have just committed UPL. So you've also got to watch out for that unauthorized practice of law when it comes to social media advertising, TikTok, these chat rooms, in different areas like that too. Also too, if you are a TikTok attorney, make sure you put disclaimers in your captions or on your bio or your info sheet that you're not creating that attorney-client relationship, that you're only licensed in these jurisdictions, that this is not, legal advice, this is just opinion, something to that effect, advertising to just protect yourself from malpractice, to protect yourself from violation of the rules. But it is an opportunity. You can make money on this from TikTok or just advertising. You can pay for space. So it is kind of an untapped market, but we do really need to think of why are we using it? Entertain, educate, promote our legal services, and you can do all that. There are actually tons of lawyers that do it. I listed them on this screen here in front of you. Some of the ones, 7.9 million viewers for Michael Mandel, one of the lawyers on there. Ethan Ostrom, 215,000 and 7.4 million likes. Anthony Barbuto, his videos are kind of funny. He incorporates humor in his videos, so they are very entertaining, and you can go on TikTok and look these up. Family law lawyer, another funny legal one, Attorney Tom. Here's more on the screen. And these are just the ones, if you Google top 10 attorney influencers, the ones that are going to pop up. But we really do have to stop and think, entertain, educate, and inspire. And I have provided, we won't be able to watch them here today, but if you do get the slide deck or reach out, There are different videos that I recommend. I put the links in the slides for you that show you this, entertaining, showing the human side of being a lawyer. Then I have a list of ones that educate. They do little sound bites like, if you get pulled over for drunk driving, here's the 3 things you need to remember. If you do fireworks on the 4th of July in the city, here's the things you need to remember. There's those different education ones. And then 2, evidence collection, hiring. I've seen attorneys go on TikTok and say, our law firm is hiring XYZ, apply here within. One was there was a trampoline at a concert and they were trying to collect video footage from concert goers. So the attorney made a TikTok post that I'm representing one of the people who got injured at this concert. We're seeking out any video footage or camera footage. Please contact me if you were there and have this type of evidence. Like evidence collection, different things. These are things you see attorneys using TikTok for in an effective manner, either advertising, collection, hiring, or everything in between. So it is kind of a untapped but getting to be tapped market, and it's great exposure. It can be free advertising, help educate, build trust, humanize us, as lawyers, and everything like that. So just kind of think about it as you're making your modern business plan. What do you want it to look like? What are the risks? Here's some of the cons of TikTok too. It can make it seem more informal for lawyers, lose your reputation in some instances. We just got to watch, make sure it's not solicitation. But do those risks and benefits outweigh, or do the benefits outweigh the risk? And that's what you really have to look like for any online or any advertising platform. With that, we are right at time, so I am going to turn it back over to the moderator. If there's any questions, please remember to submit them. Happy to answer them after this seminar as well.
As stated during the beginning of today's presentation, the link to initiate the certificate process will be displayed momentarily. My Law CLE would like to thank you for your participation in today's presentation.